Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This is Jeremy McFarland. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Football is Family. Today I want to talk about a team that if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, like I did, you probably will automatically think of a few things when I mention the name Chicago Bears. You will know the answer to this question: who would win in a fight between Godzilla and Dicka? The answer, of course, is Dicka. Thank you to the Superfans for letting me know that and making that clear. You probably would know what the Super Bowl Shuffle was. You would know that the 85 Bears probably had the best defense, and Walter Payton was probably the greatest running back of all time. And finally, you would know that Mike Ditka had the greatest 80s mustache ever. The only one closest would be Tom Selleck. Obviously, there is more to the Chicago Bears than the 1980s, but one could argue that the 1980s marked the high water mark of the Chicago Bears, especially since the merger of the AFL and the NFL in the 1970 season. The history of the Chicago Bears is a very long one. Originally founded in 1919 and 1920 as the Decatur Staleys, named after the A.E. Staley Food Starch Company, the Bears/Staleys are the second oldest NFL team currently playing. The Cardinals are the oldest. Because of the age of the team and the success that the team has had over the years, they boast 35 NFL Hall of Famers, 9 total championships, 1 Super Bowl and 8 championships before the Super Bowl era, and 2 NFC championships. In 1993, the Bears played their 1,000th game, which is an amazing testament to the success of this team and the love of their fans. In 1920, the Staleys made one of their greatest moves in hiring a man named George Halas to run the team. In 1921, Halas moved the team to the city of Chicago and won a championship. And in 1922, changed the name of the Staleys to the Bears. For nearly 50 years, the Bears played their games in Wrigley Field, the home field of the Chicago Cubs. And the Bears changed their name from the Staleys to the Bears to reflect the baseball team that they were sharing their stadium with. In 1925, Halas made a big splash in the NFL pool when he signed the Great Red Grange for $100,000. This move made the NFL a legit business. Up until this point, the NFL was viewed almost as a joke, a second-rate sports team or league. The signing of Grange made playing for the NFL desirable for many college players and made fans want to come out and see the games live. The most remembered team in the history of the Chicago Bears has to be the 85 Bears. Their defense set the bar high for other defenses in the future. Buddy Ryan brought his 46 defense, named after the jersey number of Bob Plank, to Chicago. This 46 defense brought 8 men in the tackle box and put 6 men on the line of scrimmage. Their defense was amazing that year, and it helped the Bears win the Super Bowl. And what was neat about this is if you watch the end of this game, you'll see both Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan being carried off the field to celebrate the Super Bowl victory. Another great moment in the Chicago Bears history happened in 1988 during the playoffs when they played the Philadelphia Eagles in what became known as the Fog Bowl. Halfway through the game, a massive fog came into the stadium, making it almost impossible to see what was happening on the field. I remember watching this game. It was a little bit creepy and very eerie. It was certainly a moment to be remembered and talked about even nearly 30 years later, or over 30 years later. The Bears also took part in the first American Bowl in London in 1986. Obviously, being one of the older teams in the NFL, the Bears have an impressive win-loss record. Their record in the regular season before 2020 was 10-1-2 as the Decatur Staleys, 9-1-1 as the Chicago Staleys, and 742, 581, and 39 as the Chicago Bears, along with a 17-19 record in the postseason. On a personal note, I own one Chicago Bears jersey. It is number 6 Jay Cutler jersey. Next to John Elway, Jay Cutler is my favorite player. Say what you want to about Jay. I like him, and I think he's probably the best quarterback the Bears have had in years. I hope you enjoyed this interview with my friend Ray, who is a lifelong Bears fan. If you would like to come on to this podcast, please reach out to me on Twitter at Jeremy_McFarland or join us on the new Facebook page, Football is Family. Also come by on the Sports History Network webpage to see all the amazing shows that we have to offer you. Thank you, and remember that football is family. And we're back to Football is Family, and I'd like to let my friend here introduce himself and the team that we're going to be talking about today. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ray from Chicagoland, and we're going to be talking about the Bears, my favorite team. So
now, you introduced the Bears, but Ray, you know that's not how you introduce the Chicago Bears. It's the Bears.
The Bears, yes, of course.
Yeah, who wins in a fight, Ditka or Godzilla?
Oh, that's a tough one. I will say Ditka with the stash. He has to have the 85 stash because that was the key epitome for that team and the manager that he was.
I tell you what, I was told, and I don't remember who said this, but I was told that Dick had a face like a fist.
Yes, I'm sure it was. I mean, and of course he was also a football player, so he was able to make sure that everything was tough. Because again, he was getting hit a lot. So.
Now that is probably. Would you say that he is the most well-known Chicago Bear of all time, next to George Halas?
No, I will say it'll be Walter Payton.
It would be Walter Payton. Now, who would be your favorite Bears?
I would say probably Brian Urlacher, just because he was so tough and he was able to kind of play along with just so many teams, and he kept doing what he needed to do. And obviously, he's in the Hall of Fame, so he did a great job through and through.
I would say so. Now let me ask you a question. What are some of your earliest memories of the Chicago Bears?
So I think it was 2003, the Bears played in Soldier Field for so many years, and they were renovating it, and so they needed to find a place to play their home games when they were renovating it, because it was a full-blown change of when they were changing it, so they couldn't like stop during mid-season or during the season. So they played in University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, which is about 2.5-3 hour drive from Chicago. And they played about 1 or 2 regular seasons there. I just remember kind of hearing those stories of that. Other than that, it was probably 2006, the Super Bowl run.
Now, that run, if I remember correctly, had 2 very notable players for the Bears. Number 1, Rex Grossman, and number 2, Devin Hester.
And two notable people for 2 different reasons. And the funny thing is, with the two teams that make it to the Super Bowl, the 2 Chicago teams that make it to the Super Bowl, it wasn't about the quarterback. It was never about the quarterback. Rex Grossman was average at his best. And McMahon, he was also average at best. He wasn't the throw the ball until your arm falls off. He was more or less give it to Walter Payton or give it to somebody, and then the defense will take over if we don't score. And the same thing with Rex Grossman. I mean, the 2006 Bears defense and 1985 Bears defense could be top 10 in some people's top defenses of the in NFL history.
Now I can see that they had to be game managers because they had the defense to win most games without them having to win.
One of my best games I remember. It was against the Arizona Cardinals, and this is the famous "they were who we thought they were" game.
Oh
I
yeah.
think that was um, the Bears didn't score an offensive touchdown. They still won because special teams with Devin Hester, which we mentioned earlier. I mean, he is the greatest return man of all time in NFL, without a doubt, because he has a record. He's the first person to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl on a kick return, um, and all those other things. So they scored on that. They kept it with one of the best kickers of all time, with Robbie Gould, and then the defense kept the Arizona Cardinals scoring less, but also with pick sixes, fumbles. And so I went to bed that night knowing that was going to be the first loss. And I woke up the next morning hearing that, oh no, they still won, but by the hair in their chin, basically.
Yeah, I remember that Dennis Green nearly broke the stand. We are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. I remember that. I remember
Yeah,
that.
and they really did. That's kind of like the kind of dating this game, dating this recording. Yesterday, it's kind of like the Dallas Cowboys or the Falcons losing to the Cowboys. I mean, you kind of accidentally gave it up, so it's one of those you let off the hook, and sometimes it happens, and you just gotta hope that as the team that wins, you gotta keep that going. And the Bears did. I mean, they won most of the other games except for one in the regular season, and of course they lost Super Bowl. But when you face Peyton Manning with the Harrison uh, and the running back, you can't really
I
blame them for that,
I
especially
don't
with an
think
average quarterback.
I don't think that Peyton would have lost that game even if Devin ran two back. I think that was Peyton's
Yeah,
game.
it was, and most Bears fans now get that. They get this like, no, it was one of those kind of destined to happen games. It was destined to happen for Peyton Manning once he beat Tom Brady finally. He gets his chance, and he's not gonna say no to that. So
Oh no.
that's kind of what happened, and it's unfortunate that was against the Bears. But again, it was still a good game up until like the last quarter when you kind of figured out, oh no, this game's gone, it's done.
Yeah. Oh well. All right. I got down here in Tennessee. We don't really have a long NFL history, but we're developing one, and
Yes.
you'll find number 9 around here, number 27 around here. Um, I'm imagining up in the Chicago area, number 34 is all over the place.
Yes, 34, 54, and 23. So 34 is Walter Payton, for those that don't know. 54 is Brian Urlacher, and 23 is Devin Hester. Those are the three main ones you'll find, and there's sporadic ones of when a good player kind of comes around. Nowadays, unfortunately for the Bears, there's not really too many people out there that would wear a Trubisky one or wear a. Uh, I'm kind of trying to figure out or a Mac. Mac would be the best one nowadays, 52. But again, it would be 34, 23, and 54 guaranteed.
Now, I want to tell you this, Ray. I have a number 6 Bears jersey. I actually own a Jay Cutler Bears jersey. He was one of my favorites coming out of Vanderbilt, and I followed him to Denver and then to Chicago. I do not have a Dolphins jersey, and I don't know if I really want one, but then again, I guess I have to complete the collection somehow.
That is true. You wait a few years and get it on eBay for like $10.
I probably could do that. Yeah. You hadn't had. I'm trying to remember all the quarterbacks that have come through. You had a Kyle Orton. You had a Jay Cutler. Mitch Trubisky. I think they reached a little too high for him.
Yes. I mean, to be fair, I think when it comes to Bears history, they do a bad job at the quarterback draft or finding the quarterback, but they do a great job on that and the halfback and the defense for some reason. And you could tell that Ryan Pace, who is the current GM now, tried to find that quarterback because Jay Cutler wasn't the answer, unfortunately. And then you kind of went to the next year. You kind of have like five of the quarterbacks get injured. You're like, well, none of them were great either. So do we want to keep all five of them, or do we want to find a new young stud like Mitch Trubisky to try to throw out there and see what happens? And so they end up going with Trubisky. So you're right. They kind of reached a little too high, but the reports were that Trubisky was kind of impressing the higher ups with his knowledge of football with the Bears. He was like when we went to dinner, he would talk about Peyton, Walter Payton would talk about other things and making sure that he read up on his Bears history. So he knew that it was his job for the taking. And I don't know why they decided to use the first pick that they had with him and they traded up for that position. I don't know if they thought that someone was going to take Trubisky because um, they passed up on other great players like Patrick Mahomes and other guys for someone who people were thinking would go third round. So it's kind of odd to see, but again, it is what it is in some cases.
Now, I remember that one in particular, and I'll say this: I was not sold on Trubisky, and I knew Mahomes would be good, but not this good. What the guy I thought would be great was Deshaun Watson, and he's turned out to be pretty solid too. So,
Yeah.
that's why I'm not a GM, I guess.
Same here. I probably would have. I probably wouldn't have picked Mahomes because I mean he wasn't. While he was supposed to be good, he wasn't supposed to be MVP 10-year, almost $1 billion worth. I mean, that guy saved Kansas City's football team basically. I think, and that's going on a different topic. But he's Mahomes is kind of like the Tom Brady as well, where it's like you pick the guy and you're like, well, let's see what happens. It's a draft pick.
He
What's the
is.
worst that could happen? And then all of a sudden,
I think that they're going to just might as well sign over half of the football team to him and say, "Hey, you are our Tom Brady."
yes, and
Um,
that'd be fair to say. And I mean, that's what happens.
Now, I educate me a little bit on growing up in Chicago. You have the White Sox, you have the Cubs, you have the Blackhawks, you obviously have the Bulls. You even have, and I cannot think of the soccer team.
The Chicago Fire,
That's right. I was thinking it was
which
the Fire.
yes, which is kind of funny because uh, in the 1800s there was a great Chicago Fire, so it's kind of funny that someone had to have that team name. It had to
Oh,
happen.
oh man. And then you got the Bears. Is Chicago a football city?
Yes, but I mean, so it's kind of tough. It's kind of like if you ask like people from LA or people from New York, it's kind of tough when you have every sports team. You could have one or two of them. It's kind of tough to rank them, and it depends on the year. It depends on the season as well. If it's in the fall, it's a football team, a football city, 90% of the time, unless the Cubs or White Sox are in the playoffs. In the winter, it's Blackhawks and Bulls and or Bulls. Um, and so in the summer, it's White Sox or Cubs, depending on your fandom. And the Fire. The Fire they also have a great fandom as well. But I would say football is at least top three in all year round. You have because the basketball. If you were in Chicago in the '90s, early 2000s, you had Michael Jordan, which is one of the best players of all time in basketball. And if you like in the 2010s, you go to the Blackhawks. The Bears again in '06 they had that one good run, but they just haven't really done too much after or before that, except for '85. So from '85 to the '90s, I would say it's football all around because the Blackhawks, the Sox, the Cubs, the Bulls. I don't think the Fire were around in the '80s. So you only had one good team, and of course they were so great. They're one of the best teams ever in NFL. So that's how you kind of keep them, even though they've won in the last 30 years. Actually, the out of the sports teams now, they lost. I mean, they've won the longest without winning, I should say, the drought, which Cubs fans and White Sox fans know all about with the 80 and 100+ year droughts. The Bears are at what is it now, 2020? So 35 years,
Good
if my
gracious.
math's correct.
Has it been that long?
Which
Golly.
yes, and yeah, and it'd probably be 36 years if I look at the schedules, but again with 85 Bears, I mean, you had Walter Payton, you had Mike Ditka, you had all these guys, you had the Super Bowl shuffle in December. That's the one thing that still is one of those memories is the Super Bowl shuffle, watching that music video, hearing that song. They released it in December. They were still playing regular games, like regular season games, when they released that song, saying we're going to win the Super Bowl, and they did. So that's why it's so famous, because they kind of told you what they were going to do in December.
And that was an
And so,
awful, awful video. I'm sorry. I know.
wait, no, it is, but that shows to you that athletes are not singers or dancers.
Now, my favorite bear of all time has to be the fridge.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you could put a lot of Coke in the refrigerator. He knew what he was doing.
Yes. I
Um,
mean, Perry knew what he was going to do, and it's one of those you got to use the whole team to stop me. And guess what? You may not even stop me. And he proves that time and time again.
Now, if you do a little bit of history, I want to give you a little bit of trivia that you probably already know, Ray. In the game Tecmo Bowl, when you score a touchdown, you and another player do a jump high five. And the color of your team comes up when you make contact. That scene is taken from, I want to say Walter Payton did that, and it's on NFL Films. So I thought that was pretty neat, that one of the most iconic scenes in a video game is taken from Walter Payton, and it might have been when he broke the record.
Yeah, I mean, probably because again, that one was. I mean, that was kind of the greatness of that, because he broke it, and unfortunately with Walter Payton, um, his sudden death and his sudden all that stuff. That's why kind of Walter Payton is like um, is on the Mount Rushmore of Chicago sports. One, because he was a great player. I mean, he broke the record. Emmitt Smith broke it a few years later, and that's good for Emmitt Smith. But he still broke it, and he was a team player, and I mean, he was great all around, and he was a great person as well. I mean, it's always we hear stories of things that he's done when he was alive, and things he did before that, and teaching his two kids who are still in Chicago media. They his son is a analyst for one of the Chicago sports networks, and his daughter works for the local Fox network up here. And so that whole family is kind of the lore of Walter Payton. But again, I mean, he was a great player. There's no doubt about that. And so it's kind of cool that Tecmo Bowl realized the greatness.
Now, Ray, if I have to ask you, and I ask everybody this, I want to know what makes football family to you. What makes it special to you?
So one of the best memories that I love every year, that may be affected this year in 2020, is like Thanksgiving or Christmas. No matter what teams are playing, you can watch football. You may have just like one team and you just root against the other team, but you could watch football all around, and that's what kind of brings the family together, is that bonding of just watching the teams play, watching the players grow. If you do it from college to NFL, kind of like what you did with Jay Cutler, but also when it comes to the football team's chemistry, we hear about chemistry.
Right.
We know what he was going to do. We knew what they were going to do. The bonding, as you mentioned, the Super Bowl Shuffle was not the best film. It was a terrible song, terrible scene, all that stuff. But again, they were athletes. but they did it. They got together and said, let's do this. So there's chemistry beyond that team, and of course it showed when they were just dominating everybody else. But also, like, again, when watching it, you get different generations watching it. I remember watching football with grandparents, with my parents, with my siblings. That's the three generations right there. And then now you add another generation with other kids in the family. That when the kids of the parents have kids, so it's kind of one of those things where it's a lifelong thing where people can just watch it, and as long as you kind of understand the rules, you know what's going on. And in most cases, if you're a Bears fan, you don't like the Packers. So if the Packers are playing, you root against them, no matter who it is. If it's the Bears, you root for the Bears, depending on where you are and what you're watching and where you're from. So that's what kind of makes it family to me, is the bonding that happens on the field, off the field, as an athlete, as a fan, as a family member. And even you could walk down the streets in Chicago, and if you're wearing a Bears jersey, someone else wears a Bears jersey, probably a high five in that interaction, or a fist bump, or a elbow nudge in 2020, but it will still happen. It is a ever loving thing. I mean, and that's what's kind of the great thing, is you get connections that you wouldn't see from other ideas in the world. So sports, and that's kind of the same thing with sports, but in football, I think that's what matters, is the generations get to watch it. Players get to interact with their players, and fans get to interact with fans, and that's what's kind of the bondingness with the family.
Dub Bears.
Yeah, Dub Bears.
Yeah, I want to thank you. And you work for a podcast. You want to plug it?
Sure. So I'm the research assistant for Hysteria 51. It is a comedy podcast about conspiracy theories. It's hosted by Brent Hand and John Goforth, and kind of ran by Conspiracy Bot, who is a robot that Brent made in his basement one time, and unfortunately, it talks. And so it's a weekly episode that drops every Monday. Every podcast you have, and it's just talks about conspiracies in a lighthearted manner when it is applicable. They do get serious when it's needed, and it's just a great time to kind of listen. If you're into conspiracies, check it out.
Ray, thank you. And I'm looking across at my office to the Hysteria 51 poster that I got. My best to you and your family. And guys, this is another reason why football is family.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude. And I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website, seriously, all you got to do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.